supermarket manager unjustly fired was wandering home, and when he overheard a conversation between two foreigners by the river, he pretended not to understand. Jack Thompson, a dedicated manager, sees his life fall apart after an unjust dismissal. Marked by false accusations, he finds hope when he rescues Emily, a young woman caught in a dark mystery. Jack Thompson had always been a dedicated man. Working as a regional manager for a supermarket chain in the city, he was known for his integrity and dedication. He spent long hours at work, ensuring everything ran smoothly. He knew every employee by name, their families, and their stories. Jack believed that the success of a company was directly linked to the well-being of its employees. But on a fateful day, his life changed drastically. Accused of corruption and abuse against employees, he was abruptly and humiliatingly fired. The news spread quickly. In no time, Jack found himself isolated, marked by an accusation he knew was false. The community that once respected and admired him now looked at him with suspicion. His wife, Lisa, tried to console him, but the pain of betrayal was deep. Jack wondered who could be behind the accusations and why. He had always prided himself on his honesty and dedication. This injustice was a hard blow for him. The new boss, Mark Johnson, took over with a completely different approach. Primarily concerned with the supermarket's aesthetics, he ignored organization, efficiency, and product care. Mark was an arrogant man who cared more about the appearance of the shelves than the satisfaction of customers and the well-being of employees. Under his management, service quality began to deteriorate, and tensions rose among the staff. Mark made a point of showing his power, making arbitrary decisions and punishing those who opposed him. Jack, who had always prioritized justice and fairness, was especially distressed when he learned that a salesperson, John, had been fired simply for being black. John was an exemplary employee, beloved by all. He was always willing to help his colleagues and customers, and his warm smile made everyone feel welcome. But Mark didn't see his value. John's dismissal was the last straw for many, but Jack was powerless to intervene. He had always been a defender of workers' rights, and seeing a good man treated so unjustly was something that ate away at him. Feeling wronged and discouraged, Jack decided to go home early that day. As he walked along the river that ran through the city, he tried to process the avalanche of emotions that overwhelmed him. The tranquility of the water contrasted with the storm inside him. He wondered how he could clear his name and help those who had been harmed by the new administration. The landscape around him, with its trees and flowers, seemed indifferent to his suffering, but somehow, nature offered a bit of solace. Suddenly, he heard voices. By the river, a couple was arguing in a foreign language that he couldn't identify. Curious, Jack quietly approached and pretended not to understand anything. The two seemed nervous, exchanging anxious glances and hurried gestures. Something was clearly wrong. Jack felt a twinge of curiosity mixed with concern. Would it be safe to investigate further? He hid behind some nearby trees, from where he could observe the couple without being seen. They seemed to be discussing something important, but he couldn't understand their words. Suddenly, the woman gestured toward a van parked nearby. The man nodded, and they both headed for the vehicle. Jack felt a chill down his spine. Something compelled him to follow them discreetly. He approached the van and peeked through the window. To his horror, he saw a young woman unconscious, bound, and gagged in the back seat. His heart raced, and he knew he needed to act quickly. Taking advantage of a moment when the couple was distracted, he ran to the van, opened the back door, and carefully removed the young woman. She was weak and could barely keep her eyes open. "Stay calm. I'll get you out of here," he whispered as he carried her away. As they moved away from the van, the couple realized what was happening and started shouting. Jack ran as fast as he could, searching for a safe place. He found a small abandoned cabin and entered, trying to calm the young woman while thinking about what to do next. Adrenaline rushed through his veins, but he knew he needed to stay calm to ensure her safety and his own. Jack looked at the young woman in his arms. She was visibly frightened, and he knew he needed to calm her down before she panicked. "You're safe now," he said, trying to keep his voice steady and reassuring. "My name is Jack. I'm going to take care of you." He examined her injuries, noticing the bruises and the deep cut on her forehead. His experience as a former army medic came to the forefront as he searched for ways to help her. The young woman tried to speak, but her words were unintelligible. Jack noticed a deep cut on her forehead and bruises along her arms. He found a bottle of water in the cabin and helped her drink a few sips. "We need medical help, but first I need to understand what happened," he said softly. After a few minutes, the young woman began to regain consciousness. "My name is Emily," she said, her voice trembling. They kidnapped me. I don't know what they want, but we can't call the police." Jack frowned, trying to grasp the gravity of the situation. "Why can't we call the police? They could help you." Emily shook her head vigorously. "No, please. They have connections. If they find out I spoke to the police, they'll find me and end my life." Jack took a deep breath. He was facing a moral dilemma. Should he respect Emily's request or seek immediate help? He decided to follow his intuition. "All right, Emily, let's go to my house. You need care, and I can help you there." He knew this decision could have consequences, but his priority was her safety. Jack carried Emily to his home, staying alert for any sign of the suspicious couple. When they arrived, he placed her on the couch and began treating her wounds with the medical supplies he had at home. Emily thanked him with a look of relief, but she was still clearly frightened. Jack couldn't stop thinking about how much this young woman had suffered and why she was so scared of involving the police. As Jack cared for her, he began asking questions. "Do you remember anything about them? Anything that might help us understand why they did this?" Emily closed her eyes, trying to concentrate. "They spoke a language I don't know, but I think it was something Eastern European. And they mentioned a name, something like Victor." Jack mentally noted the information. "We'll figure this out, Emily. But first, you need to rest." He set up a room for her and kept watch, determined to protect her at any cost. The next morning, Jack woke up early, worried about Emily's safety. He decided to check on her before thinking about his own problems. When he entered the room, he found her awake, staring at the ceiling with an expression of confusion and fear. "Good morning, Emily. How are you feeling?" he asked gently. Emily tried to smile, but her eyes were still full of apprehension. "Better, I think. But I'm still scared." Jack nodded, understanding. "We'll figure this out together. I promise I won't let anyone hurt you." He was determined to keep his promise, even if it meant risking his own safety. As Jack prepared breakfast, he heard a noise coming from the front door. He went to see what it was and found his wife, Lisa, with a look of shock. "Jack, what's going on here? Who is this woman?" Lisa asked, her voice full of suspicion. Jack tried to explain quickly. "Lisa, this is Emily. I found her last night. She was kidnapped and needs our help." Lisa didn't seem convinced. "And why is she here? Why didn't we go to the police?" Before Jack could respond, Emily appeared in the room, still pale and fragile. "Please don't send me away. I'm afraid of what they might do if they find out where I am," she pleaded. Lisa looked at Jack, then at Emily and sighed deeply. "All right, but we need to resolve this soon. We can't live in fear forever." Jack felt a temporary sense of relief, but he knew the situation was far from resolved. He needed to think of a way to protect Emily while restoring his wife's trust. Everyone's safety was at stake, and he was determined to find a solution. After ensuring that the young woman was safe, Jack decided to take her to his home. He knew he needed help to care for her and perhaps find out more about what was going on. However, when he arrived home, he found a devastating surprise. His wife, Lisa, was packed. "I can't take this anymore, Jack. You lost your job and now this," she said, pointing to the unconscious young woman. "I need time to think." Jack tried to argue, but Lisa was determined. In tears, she walked out the door, leaving him alone with the young stranger and an overwhelming sense of despair. Even so, He knew he couldn't allow himself to sink at that moment. The young woman needed him. With his experience as a former army medic, Jack began treating the young woman. He tended to her wounds, offered her water and food, and comforted her whenever she woke up frightened. Each time she regained consciousness, she repeated the same thing: "Don't call the police. Please, don't call the police." The next morning, Jack woke up early, worried about Emily's safety. He decided to check on her before thinking about his own problems. When he entered the room, he found her awake, staring at the ceiling with an expression of confusion and fear. "Good morning, Emily. How are you feeling?" he asked gently. Emily tried to smile, but her eyes were still full of apprehension. "Better, I think, but I'm still scared." Jack nodded, understanding. "We'll figure this out together. I promise I won't let anyone hurt you." He was determined to keep his promise, even if it meant risking his own safety. As Jack prepared breakfast, he heard a noise coming from the front door. He went to see what it was and found his wife, Lisa, with a look of shock. "Jack, what's going on here? Who is this woman?" Lisa asked, her voice full of suspicion. Jack tried to explain quickly. "Lisa, this is Emily. I found her last night. She was kidnapped and needs our help." Lisa didn't seem convinced. "And why is she here? Why didn't we go to the police?" Before Jack could respond, Emily appeared in the room, still pale and fragile. "Please don't send me away. I'm afraid of what they might do if they find out where I am," she pleaded. Lisa looked at Jack, then at Emily, and sighed deeply. "All right, but we need to resolve this soon. We can't live in fear forever." Jack felt a temporary sense of relief, but he knew the situation was far from resolved. As Jack took care of Emily, he noticed that his wife was emotionally distancing herself. Lisa spent more time away from home and avoided long conversations with him. One night, when he returned from work, he found a note on the table. "I need time to think. Take care. Lisa." Jack's heart tightened. His life seemed to be falling apart, but he couldn't afford to give up. He needed to be strong, for Emily and himself. He decided to focus on helping Emily regain her strength and, eventually, her memory. As the days passed, Emily began to regain her strength. Jack continued to care for her with patience and dedication, using his medical skills to ensure her recovery. Gradually, she began to remember fragments of her life before being kidnapped. "My name is Emily Roberts," she said one day as Jack changed the bandages on her arm. "I'm a lawyer. I was working on an important case before all this happened." Jack listened attentively as Emily told her story. She had been hired by an important client who needed help upon returning to the country. Days before she was kidnapped, she had discovered compromising information about him, but she couldn't quite remember what it was. Determined to help her remember, Jack encouraged her to talk about her work, her memories, and any details that might be relevant. Over time, Emily began to piece together the puzzle, remembering crucial details about the case and her kidnapper. As the days passed, Emily began to regain her strength. Jack continued to care for her with patience and dedication, using his medical skills to ensure her recovery. Gradually, she began to remember fragments of her life before being kidnapped. "My name is Emily Roberts," she said one day as Jack changed the bandages on her arm. "I'm a lawyer. I was working on an important case before all this happened." Jack listened attentively as Emily told her story. She had been hired by an important client who needed help upon returning to the country. Days before she was kidnapped, she had discovered compromising information about him, but she couldn't quite remember what it was. Determined to help her remember, Jack encouraged her to talk about her work, her memories, and any details that might be relevant. Over time, Emily began to piece together the puzzle, remembering crucial details about the case and her kidnapper. One day, while they were talking, Emily had a flash of memory. "Victor," she suddenly said, "he's a former politician. I was investigating his connections to human trafficking." Jack felt a chill down his spine. Things were beginning to make sense, but the truth was more terrifying than he could have imagined. Jack decided they needed to act quickly. "Emily, let's find Victor and put an end to this. But we need to be careful." They began to plan their next steps, knowing that any mistake could be fatal. Emily was determined to seek justice, and Jack was by her side, ready to face any challenge. With Emily's memories becoming clearer, they decided to find the mysterious client to get more answers. They knew the truth was hidden somewhere, and they needed to find it to resolve everything. Together, they set out to find the man who had sought Emily's help. After a long and arduous search, they finally found him. But something seemed off. The client, who introduced himself as Robert, was nervous and evasive. There was something in his eyes that didn't convey trust. As they talked, Jack and Emily realized that Robert was not who he claimed to be. They discovered that he was actually Victor, the corrupt ex-politician involved in a scheme to traffic young people to other countries. Emily had uncovered his true identity before being kidnapped, and now he was trying to cover up his crimes. The discovery was a shock, but Jack was determined to seek justice. Together, he and Emily began to gather evidence to incriminate Victor. At the same time, Emily discovered something even more disturbing. One of Victor's victims was Jack's mother, who had disappeared years ago. Jack was devastated. The thought that his mother might have been one of Victor's victims was unbearable. He couldn't stop thinking about the pain and suffering she might have endured. "Emily, we need to expose Victor and ensure he pays for all of this. Not just for you, but also for my mother," Jack said with determination. Emily agreed, knowing that their mission now had an even more personal purpose. They needed to be meticulous and careful, as Victor was a dangerous man with many resources. They began to follow Victor, observing his movements and gathering evidence. Each day was a race against time, trying to avoid Victor realizing he was being investigated. Emily used her legal skills to better understand the documents they found, while Jack used his military strategy experience to plan each step with precision. Finally, they gathered enough evidence to implicate Victor in his crimes. However, Jack knew that confronting him directly could be dangerous. "Emily, we need a plan to deliver all of this to the authorities without Victor having the chance to escape or retaliate," he suggested. Emily agreed, and together they devised a detailed plan to expose Victor and ensure he was arrested. With the evidence in hand, Jack and Emily knew they needed to act quickly. The danger of Victor discovering their plan was real, and any slip-up could be fatal. They decided to take the evidence directly to a friend of Emily's, a detective named Michael, who worked for the local police force and was known for his integrity. When they arrived at the station, Michael greeted them with a serious expression. "Emily, Jack, I'm aware of the situation and how dangerous Victor can be. We'll handle this with the utmost care," he said, taking the documents they had brought. While Michael reviewed the evidence, Jack and Emily waited anxiously. "This will work, won't it?" Emily asked, the anxiety evident in her voice. Jack held her hand and looked into her eyes. "Yes, Emily, we have to believe that. We're doing the right thing." Michael returned after a few minutes. "This is enough to open an official investigation and arrest Victor," he affirmed. "We'll plan the operation to capture him with minimal risk." In the following days, the police closely monitored Victor, gathering more evidence and preparing an operation to arrest him. Jack and Emily continued to provide information and support, determined to see justice served. Finally, the day of the operation arrived. Michael coordinated the action with precision, and Victor was arrested without incident. "You did an excellent job," Michael said to Jack and Emily. "Thanks to you, we managed to arrest a very dangerous man and prevent him from hurting others." Despite the relief of seeing Victor arrested, Jack and Emily knew their journey was far from over. There was still the matter of finding more victims and helping to bring justice to them all. Additionally, Jack was determined to discover what really happened to his mother. Meanwhile, Emily began to remember more details about her kidnapping and Victor's involvement. She remembered an important client who had sought her help upon returning to the country, days before she was kidnapped. "Jack, I think this client may have valuable information about Victor's trafficking network," she said. They decided to find this client and see what more they could uncover. The search wasn't easy, but they finally managed to arrange a meeting with him in a safe location. The client, a man named Henry, was nervous but willing to talk. I knew Victor was involved in something illegal, but I had no idea of the extent of his crimes, he confessed. I'll tell you everything I know to help you. With Henry's help, Jack and Emily obtained more crucial information that could strengthen the case against Victor and expose the entire trafficking network. But they knew there was still much to do. We'll keep fighting for justice, Jack said, determined. For all the victims, including my mother. Emily held Jack's hand and smiled. We're in this together, Jack. We won't give up. With Victor in prison and new evidence in hand, Jack and Emily knew the next step was to ensure he was tried and convicted. Working tirelessly with Michael and other members of the police force, they gathered all the necessary evidence and prepared for the trial. The courtroom was packed on the day of the trial. Journalists, victims' families, and community members were present, all waiting for justice. Jack felt a knot in his stomach as he entered the courtroom, but Emily's presence by his side gave him strength. We're almost there, she whispered, squeezing his hand. During the trial, the evidence against Victor was presented clearly and convincingly. Witnesses, including Henry, gave testimonies that revealed the true extent of Victor's crimes. Emily, as an experienced lawyer, helped ensure that every detail was exposed, leaving no loopholes for the defense. Victor maintained a cold and disdainful expression throughout the trial, but Jack knew the noose was tightening. Finally, after days of testimonies and presentations of evidence, the verdict was given, guilty on all charges. Victor was sentenced to a long prison term, and the victims finally had a sense of justice. Despite the victory in court, Jack still felt a void regarding his mother's disappearance. However, one day, while reviewing old documents from Victor, he found an unexpected clue, a photo of his mother alongside other victims, taken at a location he recognized. It was an abandoned warehouse on the outskirts of the city. Jack and Emily decided to investigate the warehouse. When they arrived, they found records and documents that revealed more about what happened to Victor's victims. Among the papers, Jack found a letter written by his mother. In it, she described her hopes of being rescued and her eternal love for Jack. Never give up, my son. I will always believe in you, the letter read. His mother's words brought tears to Jack's eyes, but they also renewed his determination. We'll make sure none of these victims are forgotten, he said to Emily. We'll keep fighting for them. Emily embraced Jack, feeling the depth of his pain and determination. I'm with you, Jack. Always. As the days passed, Jack and Emily worked tirelessly to help other victims and their families. They became advocates for the rights of human trafficking victims, using their experiences to bring change and awareness. Through this work, Jack and Emily grew closer, developing a deep and unbreakable bond. Mutual respect and a passion for justice transformed into something more. One day, while walking along the same river where it all began, Jack stopped and looked into Emily's eyes. I don't know what I would do without you, Emily. You brought light into my life when everything seemed lost. Emily smiled and held Jack's hand. We found strength in each other, Jack. Together, we can face anything. Eventually, Jack and Emily got married, united not only by love, but also by a shared mission of justice and compassion. They continued to fight for the rights of victims, keeping alive the memory of those who suffered at the hands of criminals like Victor. Through their actions and dedication, Jack and Emily proved that even in the darkest circumstances, hope and love can prevail. Together, they built a future based on respect, justice, and love, inspiring others to do the same. And so, Jack and Emily's journey, begun by an injustice and filled with challenges, became a story of overcoming, love, and justice, showing that even in adversity, it is possible to find a path to the light.